Hi, my name is Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Ruán Magan, the director of Steps of Freedom. Ruán, you're very welcome to Australia, a wet and windy Australia.
Thanks, Enda. I'm greeting you back from a not so windy but damp Dingle in the very far west of Ireland, where in fact we filmed quite a bit of the documentary Steps of Freedom. I have to say, I always have to say this at the beginning of these things that I really should be sitting here with 200 people, because Steps of Freedom was made by at least a crew of 200. There were 100 dancers, 30, 40 musicians, huge crew all over the world. So I'm here representing them, Enda.
Great. Congratulations. I really enjoyed the film. And I suppose it was great to see a film about Irish dancing, something that is so dear to our hearts, but also has been often misunderstood down through the years. But I really enjoyed the film and your take on the film. I was going to ask you, you talk about the number of people involved. How does a project like this come about? I know that you worked with Tyrone Productions, and so would it be a single person who drives this this project? Is this something that you've been driving for a while in terms of getting the project up?
Yes, well, I've been at it. Would you believe it's nearly 8 years now since we started this? I've made a lot of history documentaries, documentaries about Irish history and American history and European history. But I've also had the honour of working alongside John and Moya, John McColgan and Moya Doherty, who of course the people behind Riverdance, over the years, and just been intrigued by why was Riverdance so successful, and why were the other major dance shows that, say, Michael Flatley and others did, so successful. Just to quantify it, it's estimated about 2 billion people have seen some of those, one or other of those big dance shows. I mean, it's just extraordinary success that Irish dance had. And I've kept going, why though? Like, what is it about Irish dance? What intrinsically is it about Irish dance that connects with people? Obviously, Bill Whelan's music is so important, and the dancers are so important, but there must be, or might there be, something else? So that's what intrigued me. I thought, let's set out and see if we could answer that question. I have to say, I'm not a dancer, but I like dancing, but I'm not an Irish dancer. And so I had to learn an awful lot about, the techniques and the music and the method and going back in history. But what emerges very quickly is that Irish dance is not just Irish dance. It's an assimilation of many other cultural forces, because of course the Irish for thousands of years were traveling around the earth, and so that all of that fuses into Irish dance to make it what it is today.
It's interesting that you talk about the popularity of Irish dance, because my own experience, I was in England from the mid-80s, and so I was there when the Riverdance phenomenon happened, and I do remember a little girl, second generation Irish, and she was so proud of her Irish dancing costume, and her friends were very jealous of this very colourful costume, and I do remember thinking, this is possibly the first time that she's had something about her Irish heritage that the kids at school are thinking, wow, we wish we were Irish, I actually made a documentary in London in the 90s about dancing. But come back to the film, the popularity of dance. I wanted to throw that back into the mix. That maybe in the 90s, when Riverdance was happening, that it was part of a Celtic Tiger. It was part of something that was happening, where Ireland was stepping onto the mainstream.
Sure. No, I think I think you're absolutely right about so many things there. And I've actually seen the work you did in the 90s. And there was something very interesting happening, wasn't there, where Ireland was at last gaining confidence, and we could, hold our heads up high, and our economy was finally getting some kind of reasonable traction. Education was kicking in. There was a new confidence in Ireland, and there's no doubt that Riverdance manifested that and surfed that wave. But I suppose it belies the fact that Irish dance had, as you say, been it was almost a cultural talisman for the diaspora. It meant something far more than the sum of its parts to people who'd left Ireland, not just in the 20th century, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, going right back to the 1800s and the 1900s. The one thing that the people who left Ireland could take with them was their bodies, and that meant that the one thing that they could carry with them was dancing. They may not have had many resources or much wealth, but they could keep dancing. And so you see that in Australia, you see that in America, you see that in England, that the Irish, everywhere you went, the Irish were dancing. And there's also something very interesting that happens among the diaspora, that they're very proud of the dance. So the dance is put forward with a strong body and a strong attitude, and you see that coming home in a way with Riverdance and the other shows, where Gene Butler, Michael Flatley, Colin Dunn, and others who are all members of the diaspora, come back with this very strong body, postured Irish dancing, which is kind of different to what had been developing at home in Ireland. So that I think the success of Irish dance today has a huge amount to do with the diaspora.
Open to them, I suppose it was a bit of an irony for second generation who had not had a great time in England, for example, and then suddenly their heritage is valued. I was interested in the work with Cormac Begley. And the opening sequence was. How did you come to plan that?
Wow. Okay, thank you. Cormac Begley, of course, he's a box player, but he's very unique, very young. He comes from the very famous Begley family, who in fact live just up the road from where.
Yes, Seamus
and Brandon and all of them. The best hoolie you'll ever have on planet Earth will be if you find that entire Begley family in one pub together. That's the place to search for in life. So Cormac is one of that tribe, and of course he's breaking new ground with that instrument. He plays these tiny little concertinas.
Yes.
Boy does he make a sound out of them. I mean, it's just, he rocks the house down on his own. So I've known Cormac for many years. And in fact, when in the 7 or 8 years of gestation for this documentary, I went to him, among others, for advice, because we were looking for the pure drop, because there is this sense that maybe those modern dance shows that we've just talked about, they're Broadway shows, it's Showtime, it's Hollywood. So I was trying to find, well, where was the origin? Where was the source? And Cormac was one of the people who has done a lot of work on that. So because we were talking, I also asked him, would he grace us by perhaps playing the opening tune for the documentary. But what I love about it is it's for when viewers get to see it, it's a big film. I mean, it's an epic film. And we started with this little man on a cliff in the west of Ireland with this little box. And as I say, he's making some music, right? And this huge drone shot. Now that drone shot coming in, or it's like a helicopter shot, oddly was influenced by the first movie I ever worked on, which was a Ron Howard film called Far and Away, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. And he started the movie with a big helicopter shot coming in over the Blasket Sound towards a village that they had built. And I just thought it's just an in-joke for me that I'd start with almost the same shot. and that's it. But Cormac's amazing, and what I love about it is then what I learned, and I hadn't understood this, is that Irish dance is peculiar because it is a conversation between the dancer and the musician. So it's always going to have, they're almost symbiotically connected. It's like two musicians playing together. The dancer is playing the musician, the instrument of their feet, and the musician is playing the music. But they're both in tune to get together. There's a lovely sequence in the documentary later on where Cormac Begley and Stephanie Keane show that how that's done. It's the most beautiful thing. They're literally tripping together as they perform. It's the most beautiful thing. Shot again on a pier up the road from here.
Excellent. Was that a new tune? I know that he's got this bass note on the Buska Ceol now, which I hadn't heard before, but it's marvelous.
It's O'Neill's. He plays these drones. I mean, they're old instruments that he's reconditioning, but he also alters them, as far as I understand. He adapts them. Yeah. And so he that's a drone you're hearing, but he adds other drones to them. So he's just being utterly cheeky with it, and that's I think that's O'Neill's March, but arranged by Cormac. So and again, that's what's so playful about it. It's a 400-year-old tune that's being modernized and brought into. Yeah, because I mean, I think you'd know more about this, Enda, than I would, but one gets the sense, certainly I did making this documentary, that this new generation, the young generation today, are about to bring all of this, the music and the dance, into a completely different place. They're at it already. They're breaking incredible ground. It's a very exciting time musically and from a dance point of view to be living.
Yes. I'm thinking of Lancome but even Fontaine's DC. The latest album is what's it called? The Curse of the Deer. But yes, I think it is exciting times. Tell us, what did you find out? What was your discovery along the way about Irish dance, and the thing that maybe surprised you or blew you away?
Well, I mean, the whole thing was a voyage of discovery for me. So I could talk to you for hours about the things that blew me away. I love the fact that there always has been this element of competition in Irish dance. So, Enda, you and I will meet each other at a fair. You'll go, I'll lay down a few steps, and I'll go, I'll better you, right? And that's always been part of it. As far as back as the history allows us to look, competition is at the heart of it. So so you're always going, this is how I dance, right? And that's a very African thing, a very African-American thing. It's why the Irish dancers and the African-American dancers seem to have hit it off, because they would meet in the street and, just instead of hitting each other, they'd dance off against each other. But I think there's been this question always. Remember, the first thing I found when I started researching was, why do Irish people dance with their hands down by their sides? Yeah.
Oh yes.
There was this idea that it's because the British soldiers would be going by the cottage window and you wouldn't be able to see the hands move, but the feet would be moving like crazy, so they wouldn't know we're dancing. Or maybe the priests might be going by. That was the old wives' tale. There's even a phrase which is God's in the body and the devil's in the feet, which is the way they used to see it. But I don't think any of that's true. And I'd say what's much more likely, which we go into a bit in the documentary, is that the dancing masters just wanted to create a bit of form and give the people who by this time, 1700s in Ireland, were rather living through difficult circumstances because of British rule, just to give them some confidence and some decorum. They taught them to sort of dance with a straight body. And all the emphasis goes on the feet. But the key to that is that Irish dance is a percussive dance, right? As I was saying, it's a musical instrument they're playing. Their feet are the musical instrument. And they even used to go to the trouble of putting a box in the floor of some cottages and the earth would cover that, so that you could dance in the center of the cottage and make a nice big, big heavy sound. Or they'd dance, as you know, on a barrel, or they'd dance on a table. But percussion is at the heart of the form. So I think that's the thing that really got me, is that's what we call the steps of freedom, because as British rule became more and more oppressive, and as time went on, and as the Irish, most of the Irish people ended up with less and less, they could express their cultural strength and independence through dance. And dance becomes like a martial form of expression. It says, you may have enslaved my country, but you haven't enslaved me personally. I'm still free and I still dance. And that really makes an awful lot of sense. Even if you look at Riverdance, you look at that line at the end, that incredible line, that strong line of 20 or 30 dancers. It just has that feeling of, you can come at me, but you cannot stop me. I will dance, I will continue, I am strong. And that's not just new in Riverdance. You see that the whole way back, going back 300-400 years, that aspect, that characteristic of Irish dance.
I'm reminded my dad was from North Mayo, and he told me that the school dances were at his house because they had a flag floor, and the other cottages had dirt, so they got a better sound and didn't raise so much dust. I was interested in the most unusual location, because you seem to get lots and lots of different places. Where for you was the most interesting place that it took you geographically?
So some of the viewers might be interested to know, we filmed this through COVID, so everywhere was in lockdown. It was an extraordinary logistical challenge. So all those scenes in America and the scenes in France are shot with me in an office in Dublin, and connected with really incredible Zoom technology, which allows us to give me a feed from each camera that we're shooting, and a feed to the local director of photography and the first assistant director. So that was all quite interesting. So all the crews that were involved in this really worked very, very hard in difficult circumstances to make it work. I think the most interesting place we got to was a hill called Sliabh Moor on top of in Leitrim, and you can't really walk up to it, so we had to sort of hike up. It's that opening. It's very early dance. The film's about 30 dancers, and they're all dancing on the rough ground, and they're showing a thing called the Rinca Fada, the long dance, which comes from the 14, 15, 1600s. And getting up on top of that, which has also got 3 huge cairns, so it's been a sacred site in Ireland since 4000 BC. At least, was really, really, really beautiful. And I love the idea of us bringing Irish dance to this ancient place and connecting it then into, the modern, with the more modern dances that we have. I love that place. Took an awful lot of effort to get up there, and I'm very, very thankful for the crew for making that work.
I could chat as well for hours, but we're running out of time. And I was interested, you mentioned that you've got another project coming, which is around the Civil War. Are you able to talk about that at the moment?
We're nearly finished the production on that. So it's 3 hours on the Irish Civil War, which of course is an interesting story for all sorts of reasons, but primarily, I suppose, because it was never told. Even if you look at those amazing interviews that the BBC filmmaker Robert Key made with the key participants in the 1970s, 1980s, looking back at their lives, they'll tell you about 1916, they'll talk about the War of Independence. The minute they're asked about the Civil War, they go, I don't remember anything about that. So there was an omerta about the Irish Civil War. We weren't taught about it in school. No one made documentaries about it. There were very few books published on it. So thankfully, that's been addressed now in the last couple of years. So this is an interesting story about Irish history, which for obvious reasons no one wanted to tell. Brendan Gleeson is narrating it. It'll be there's a big gala event down in UCC in Cork in October, where we'll launch it. It's the beautiful score has been written by Natasha Polberg, and so that'll be played live by the National Concert Orchestra. So it's a big moment. We might cut it down to a feature, in which case we'd love to send it to you, Enda, maybe next year. But it's a tough story, and it very much shows how Ireland stumbled into the first decades of its independence. You know, it was a really unfortunate event. It's hard to see. It's easy to see how it could have been avoided, but I think all sides, in some sense, are to blame for allowing it to happen.
Wow. Well, Steps of Freedom is going to be the opening night film, and we're going to go to 5 cities and also online. So it'll be a great honor, great pleasure to bring that film all across Australia. And once again, thanks for joining us, Ruán, and Slán agus Bannacht.
Just thanks a million, Enda, for having Steps of Freedom at the film festival. We're absolutely honoured to be part of it. You run an amazing festival, so thank you for that.